Millionaire hires a fake date for his ex's engagement, but ends up falling for her honesty. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. It was 10:47 p.m. when Adrian Cole, the 34-year-old CEO of Cole Designs, sat alone in his glass-walled office overlooking the city skyline. Rain streaked the windows like silver threads, blurring the towers below. The office was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner and the low buzz of his phone lighting up again and again, each notification another reminder of the story that had gone viral. His ex-girlfriend Melissa had just gotten engaged to his business rival, and the whole industry was talking about it. Adrian's jaw tightened as he scrolled through the glossy photos, her diamond ring, her radiant smile, and that smug caption, "When you finally choose the right man." He closed his eyes, the words echoing like a dare. He could almost hear the board members whispering behind his back. He built an empire but could not keep a woman. With one deep breath, he straightened in his chair and pressed the intercom. "Leah, cancel tomorrow's interviews," he said, "and send me the contact file for the event coordinators." His assistant's hesitant voice crackled through. "Sir, the engagement party. You were not really planning to—" "Yes," Adrian cut her off. "If Melissa wants a show, she will get one." Hours later, under the flickering neon of a small florist shop downtown, Elena Tran was closing her register, counting the last few crumpled bills. Her shop, Petal and Bloom, once smelled like dreams and lavender. Now it smelled like stress and unpaid rent. The landlord had already warned her. One more missed payment and the store was gone. Her mother's medical bills sat piled in a worn envelope under the counter, each line a reminder of how far hope had slipped. When the shop door chimed, she looked up, startled. A man in a perfectly tailored black coat stood there, rainwater dripping from his umbrella. His presence filled the room quietly powerful, almost intimidating. "We are closed," she said softly, pushing a stray curl from her face. "I am not here for flowers," Adrian replied, his voice low and deliberate. "I am here to make you an offer." He placed a sleek folder on the counter. Inside, neat lines of text formed a short, unusual contract. "You will accompany me to a formal event this Saturday. You will act as my date. You will be compensated fairly." Elena blinked, unsure if she had heard him right. "You want to hire me? To pretend to be your girlfriend?" Adrian nodded once. "A professional arrangement. Nothing personal." She gave a nervous laugh. "This sounds insane." "Why me?" His gaze did not waver. "Because you look like someone who cannot fake a thing to save her life." For a moment, she stood frozen, torn between disbelief and curiosity. The man before her seemed to have everything, yet there was a strange loneliness in his eyes, a quiet ache that mirrored her own. She glanced again at the envelope of unpaid bills, and then back at the folder. "What is the catch?" she asked. "3 rules," Adrian said calmly. "Do not fall in love. Do not ask about my personal life. And when the weekend is over, walk away." His words hung in the air like a challenge. Elena hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of the folder. Outside, thunder rolled above the city, echoing the storm building in both of their lives. She should have said no. But as she stared into his eyes, something inside her whispered that this deal, this impossible, reckless agreement, was about to change everything. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the wide windows of Adrian's penthouse, spilling across the marble floor like liquid gold. He had barely slept. The folder from last night sat open on the table, the ink of her signature still drying. For the first time in years, a decision of his felt impulsive and strangely human. At 9 sharp, Elena arrived at the building's private entrance, holding her purse tightly as if it were her last piece of armor. The guard had looked at her twice, unsure how someone in a simple cardigan and worn flats belonged in that world of glass and steel. Adrian appeared in the lobby, crisp suit, polished shoes, expression unreadable. "You are early," he said. "You said punctuality mattered," she replied. He gestured toward the elevator. "Then let us get to work." Inside the penthouse, the city stretched endlessly beyond the windows. Elena could not hide her awe. She had seen spaces filled with flowers before, but never one filled with silence that loud. Adrian poured himself coffee, his movements precise, mechanical. "There are 3 events before the engagement party," he said, sliding a tablet toward her. "A charity gala tomorrow, a dinner with investors, and a family brunch. You will attend them all, learn names, learn faces. Pretend we have been together for 6 months." She blinked. 6 months? That is a lot of pretending. Then you had better learn quickly. His tone was clipped, but beneath it was fatigue, the kind that no amount of caffeine could hide. Elena took a slow breath. "Fine, but if I am going to sell this, I need to know something about you. What kind of person am I supposed to be in love with?" He looked at her for a long second, the question catching him off guard. "Someone who is difficult to love," he finally said. The room went quiet. For the rest of the morning, she was fitted for dresses, coached on etiquette, and given a crash course on the world he lived in, a world of charity auctions, champagne flutes, and perfect smiles. She stumbled over fork placement and formal greetings, earning an amused glance from Adrian every time she tried too hard. At one point she muttered, "These people greet each other like robots." He almost smiled. "You will get used to it. Or I will embarrass you," she said dryly. "Let us hope it is the first option." By the afternoon, they stood before a mirror as the stylist pinned the last strand of Elena's hair. Adrian studied her reflection quietly. Gone was the small-town florist in faded jeans. In her place stood a woman with quiet grace, nervous but radiant. "It will do," he said simply. Elena turned toward him, a trace of defiance in her eyes. "You mean I look like someone who belongs next to you?" His expression softened just enough to betray the truth. "You look like yourself. That will be enough." The next evening came faster than either of them expected. The charity gala shimmered with lights, the kind that turned everyone's faces into something almost unreal. As they entered, whispers followed them. "Is that Adrian Cole? Who is she?" Elena's hand trembled slightly, and without thinking he reached for it. The gesture was small, but it steadied her. "Remember," he whispered, "we smile, we nod, we do not explain." The evening unfolded in a blur of introductions. Adrian spoke with controlled charm, while Elena listened, smiled, and learned how to breathe inside a world that measured worth in last names. When a woman from the press approached, microphone ready, Elena panicked for half a heartbeat, then said brightly, "We met through my flower shop." He pretended to buy roses but asked for coffee instead. The reporter laughed. Adrian froze for a second, then played along. "It was a good investment," he said smoothly. The crowd chuckled, the tension eased, and for a fleeting moment, it felt almost real. Later that night, in the car ride home, the city lights gliding past the tinted windows, Adrian glanced at her. "You handled that well." "Thank you," she said. "For a moment, I almost forgot we were pretending." He looked away, the corner of his mouth curving. "That makes one of us." The silence that followed was not awkward, it was fragile, as if both knew something had shifted. Neither dared name it yet. But somewhere between the flash of cameras and the hum of the road, a spark had quietly begun to burn. By the end of that week, Elena had learned more about the language of luxury than she ever thought possible. Each morning began with fittings, media coaching, and quiet breakfasts where Adrian barely spoke a word. The air between them carried something unsaid, a strange rhythm of professionalism and curiosity. One afternoon, as they reviewed the weekend itinerary, Adrian handed her a printed schedule. "The investor dinner will be private. No photographers, but it will test you," he said. "Test me?" she asked. "They will want to know who you are. Every question will be a trap. Answer with grace, not truth." "Grace, not truth," she repeated. "You make honesty sound dangerous." His eyes lifted. "In my world, it is." That night, the dinner unfolded inside a rooftop restaurant glowing in gold light. Waiters moved like choreography. Adrian introduced Elena to partners and investors, men and women who studied her with polite curiosity. One woman leaned forward, voice sharp beneath the charm. "So, Elena, what do you do when you are not keeping our CEO company?" The table quieted. Elena smiled gently. "I work with flowers," she said. "I help people say things they cannot find words for." The woman blinked, caught off guard by the simplicity of it. Adrian hid a smile behind his wineglass. When the evening ended, he walked her to the car. "You did well," he said. "You mean I survived?" "You surprised them," he replied. "And me." "Was that a compliment?" she teased. "Do not get used to it." The following morning, A bouquet of white roses waited at her door, with a single note in Adrian's handwriting. For the woman who speaks in honesty. Elena touched the petals, unsure if it was part of the act or something quietly real. Later that day, they met again for brunch, with his family at his mother's estate, a vast, sunlit property filled with too much silver and too little warmth. His mother, a woman with diamond earrings and eyes to match, assessed Elena the way one might inspect a painting. "So this is the florist," she said. Elena smiled politely. "Yes, ma'am. And you two have been together how long?" 6 months, Adrian replied smoothly. "She must be extraordinary to keep your attention that long," his mother said. Her tone was half admiration, half suspicion. Elena answered softly, "Extraordinary is not always loud, Mrs. Cole." The older woman studied her, perhaps expecting a rehearsed smile, but found something unguarded instead. Over the course of the meal, Adrian watched Elena move through every conversation with quiet sincerity. When his younger sister asked if love made him less focused at work, Elena laughed lightly and said, "If it does, maybe that is a good thing." Sometimes people need to remember they are human before they can lead. Even his mother went silent for a heartbeat. Later, when the guests had gone and the staff cleared the table, Adrian found Elena alone by the balcony, gazing over the garden. "You impressed them," he said. "That was not my goal." "Then what was?" "To survive another meal without spilling orange juice on your marble floor," she said, a faint smile tugging her lips. He laughed quietly, the sound foreign even to himself. "You make everything complicated." "Maybe," she said. "But life was complicated before I showed up, was it not?" He looked at her, then really looked. The evening light softened her face, the breeze playing with her hair. For a man who spent his life controlling outcomes, this felt dangerously unpredictable. "You are not what I expected," he admitted. "Good," she whispered. "Expectations are boring." The drive back to the city was silent but not cold. Every mile carried a question neither dared to voice. By the time they reached her apartment, the city lights shimmered like scattered diamonds across the windshield. "The engagement party is tomorrow," Adrian said. "After that, the contract ends." "Right," she replied, her tone light but her eyes heavy. "Then I guess I should thank you in advance for the paycheck." "Keep it," he said softly. "You earned it." She opened the door, hesitated for a second, then looked back. "Good night, Adrian." He wanted to say something more, something that did not sound like business, but the words stayed trapped between pride and fear. As the car pulled away, he realized he had started the week hiring a stranger and somehow ended it wishing he could be the man she believed he was. The night of the engagement party arrived wrapped in a kind of brilliance that made even the stars seem dim. The Grand Luminara Hotel glimmered under chandeliers and crystal glasses, every corner whispering luxury and competition. Adrian stood near the entrance, his expression composed, his tie straight, but inside his chest was a quiet storm. He had faced boardrooms tougher than this, but nothing prepared him for the thought of seeing Melissa again. Cameras flashed as guests arrived, champagne fizzing like liquid gold. When Elena entered, the world seemed to shift a little. She wore a pale silver gown, soft and elegant, her hair swept into a simple knot. No diamonds, no designer arrogance, just grace that turned heads for all the right reasons. For a heartbeat, Adrian forgot the reason she was there. She walked up to him, her voice steady. "So, are you ready for your grand performance?" He glanced at her and said, "With you here, maybe I do not have to act as much." Inside, the ballroom was a scene out of a magazine. Melissa stood in the center, radiant in red, her fiancé beside her, Thomas Grant, the man who had spent months trying to buy out Adrian's company. When their eyes met, time seemed to fold in half. Melissa's smile faltered for a second, then returned sharper than ever. "Adrian," she greeted, her tone honeyed with mock pity. "And you must be Elena?" the florist said, offering her hand. "It is lovely to finally meet the woman who taught him so much about resilience." A quiet gasp rippled through the nearby crowd. Adrian almost choked on his drink, hiding a smirk. Melissa's expression hardened. "Resilience," she repeated, her words brittle. "How poetic." "It was not poetry," Elena replied gently. "Just observation." The moment was brief, but it tilted the entire room's energy. For the rest of the night, whispers followed them, questions, curiosity, envy. Reporters snapped photos, guests speculated, and Adrian's PR manager texted him non-stop warnings about optics. But none of it mattered. When the band started to play, He offered his hand to Elena. "Dance with me," he said. "Is that part of the contract? Consider it a bonus." As they moved to the rhythm, her eyes met his, unguarded. "You really did love her, did you not?" she asked softly. "Once," he admitted. "But love built on pride does not last." "And what about love built on honesty?" He hesitated. "I would not know. I never tried it." Their steps slowed, and the world around them blurred. For a moment, he forgot that hundreds of people were watching, forgot the cameras, forgot the deal. It felt like something fragile and real was slipping through the cracks of everything false. But the illusion shattered when a voice called out behind them. "Mr. Cole, care to comment on your new relationship contract?" A reporter held up a tablet displaying leaked photos of the agreement. Gasps erupted across the room. Melissa's triumphant smile cut through the chaos like a blade. "A contract, Adrian? So that is what love looks like now?" she taunted. Adrian froze. Elena's eyes widened as the crowd closed in. The headlines on the screen screamed, "CEO fakes relationship to spite ex." Security began ushering people away as flashes exploded. Adrian turned to Elena, panic and frustration bleeding through his calm facade. "Did you tell anyone?" he demanded. Her face went pale. "What? Of course not." "Then how?" He stopped himself, but the damage was already done. Her voice trembled. "You think I sold you out? I do not know what to think anymore," he said quietly. The words hit harder than any headline. Elena's throat tightened. "Maybe you should learn to believe in something other than contracts." She turned away, her silver gown vanishing into the sea of confusion and flashing lights. The press swarmed, questions rising like static, but Adrian stood frozen, his chest hollow. When he finally left the ballroom, the night air hit like a slap. The city below glittered cold and indifferent, as if mocking him for every wall he had built. Alone in his car, he stared at the folder on the seat beside him, the same folder that started it all. He thought of her voice, the way she had said his name, as if it meant something more. And for the first time in years, Adrian Cole, the man who calculated everything, had no plan at all. The next morning, the news spread faster than any wildfire. Every major outlet ran the same headline: Adrian Cole's fake love story. Investors called. His board demanded explanations. By noon, his name trended everywhere for all the wrong reasons. But the worst part was not the scandal, it was the silence from Elena. She had vanished. Her phone was disconnected, her flower shop closed. The world around Adrian spun in noise, but her absence was the only sound he heard. Inside his office, his assistant Leah placed a printed report on his desk. "Sir, we traced the leak," she said carefully. "It came from Melissa's team." Adrian looked up slowly, the pieces finally falling into place. Melissa had planned it, not just to humiliate him, but to destroy the one person who had shown him something real. "Get the press on the line," he said. Leah hesitated. "You are going to make a statement?" "No," he said, standing. "I'm going to tell the truth." That evening, the ballroom where everything had collapsed only hours earlier was now filled again, this time with journalists, cameras, and an audience waiting for blood. Adrian stepped onto the small stage, the microphone catching the sharp edge in his breath. "Last night," he began, "the world saw me at my worst, and the woman beside me paid the price for something she did not do." The murmurs quieted. "The relationship contract was real," he continued, his voice steady, "but so was everything that came after it. I thought I could control appearances, emotions, even people. I was wrong. She did not betray me, I betrayed her by not believing in her." Someone from the press shouted, "Who leaked it, Mr. Cole?" Adrian met the question head-on. "Melissa Grant's public relations team," he said, "and I will be pursuing legal action, but that is not why I am here. I am here because I owe someone an apology, not a lawsuit." The room went silent, the flash of cameras softening. He ended the conference without taking more questions, leaving behind a stunned crowd and a headline he could finally live with. Later that night, Adrian drove to the outskirts of the city, to a neighborhood that smelled like rain and earth instead of perfume and politics. He stopped outside a shuttered storefront, the sign above it still read, "Petal and Bloom." The lights inside flickered faintly. He pushed the door open, and the small bell chimed. Elena stood behind the counter, packing away the last of her things. She froze when she saw him. "You should not be here," she said quietly. "Neither should you," he replied, looking around. "This place suits you." "Not anymore," she said. "The landlord is taking it back tomorrow." He took a step closer. "I gave a press conference. The world knows the truth now." "And what truth is that?" she asked. That I was a fool, he said. That I hurt someone who did nothing but show me how to be honest. She shook her head, tears glimmering in her eyes. You cannot fix everything with apologies, Adrian. I know, he said softly. That is why I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking for a chance to prove that this time, nothing between us is fake. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the city outside filled the silence. Finally, Elena whispered, You really meant what you said out there? Every word, he answered. You taught me that truth does not need a contract. She smiled faintly. Maybe you finally learned something worth keeping. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope, slightly singed at the edges, the original contract. I thought this might belong to you, he said. You kept it? She asked. Only to destroy it properly. He took out a lighter and set the paper aflame. They watched in silence as the ashes drifted to the floor, soft and gray. No more rules, he said quietly. No more pretending. For the first time in days, she smiled a real one, fragile but alive. So what now? She asked. Now, he said, we start something real. The two of them stood there in the dim glow of the empty shop, surrounded by wilting flowers and the faint scent of lavender. It was not grand or cinematic, but it was true. And for Adrian Cole, truth was finally enough. Weeks passed, and for the first time in years, Adrian allowed silence to exist without filling it with deadlines and phone calls. The scandal had slowly burned out, replaced by a different kind of story, one about redemption. His company's stocks recovered, investors calmed, and yet, none of that compared to the quiet rhythm he was learning with Elena. She reopened her flower shop with his help, though he refused to take credit. This is your space, he told her. I am just buying time until the world realizes beauty still matters. They spent mornings arranging blooms, afternoons drinking coffee on the back steps, and evenings sharing stories about the people they used to be. He would tease her about her stubbornness. She would laugh at how he used to plan conversations like meetings. Slowly, something fragile but steady grew between them, an understanding that love did not need to be loud to be true. One rainy evening, Adrian showed up at her shop carrying takeout in a small box. Before you say anything, he said, setting it on the counter, it is not jewelry. She raised an eyebrow. That sounds like something a man who bought jewelry would say. He smiled. Just open it. Inside was a brass key attached to a white ribbon. What is this? She asked. It is the key to a new gallery space, he said. I bought it in your name. You once said flowers help people say what they cannot find words for. I thought you could teach others that language. She stared at him, speechless. Adrian, you cannot keep doing this. Doing what? Showing up with grand gestures like you are trying to earn forgiveness. He paused, his voice low. I am not trying to earn anything. I am just trying to give back a fraction of what you gave me. The rain tapped softly on the windows. Elena closed the box gently. You still think everything needs to be fixed, she said. Maybe some things just need to be felt. I am learning, he said quietly. They stood there in the dim light, the air smelling faintly of roses and coffee. She looked up at him, her eyes calm but unsure. Do you ever regret it? She asked. The contract, the lies, the chaos? He met her gaze. No, because it led me here. And here feels like truth. Days turned into weeks. They began hosting community workshops in the new gallery events where people learned how to express emotion through color, scent, and arrangement. The press called it the Honest Bloom Project. For once, the attention felt right. Adrian stopped attending shareholder parties. He preferred stacking chairs after workshops and sweeping petals from the floor. It was messy and real. One night after a class, Elena found him sitting on the floor among buckets of tulips, his sleeves rolled up, his hands stained with green. I think you are finally starting to look like one of us, she teased. Good, he said. Maybe I am finally becoming the man I should have been all along. She sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. You know, she whispered, this is not how these stories usually end. Then let us write our own ending, he replied. Outside, the city lights flickered through the rain, reflecting off the glass like fragments of possibility. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single folded paper, the remains of the burned contract, the only piece he had kept. A reminder, he said softly, that truth costs less than pride. Elena smiled. Then promise me something. Anything. Promise me that whatever happens, we never fake our way through another day. He nodded. Deal. She laughed quietly. No more deals, Adrian. He smiled back. Right, just life. The hum of traffic faded into the night as they sat together, surrounded by the scent of flowers that had learned, like them, to bloom again after the storm. For the first time, Adrian did not think about what came next. The man who once planned everything finally understood that love, like the petals around them, only lived when you let it be. The following month brought the grand opening of the Honest Bloom Gallery, a space filled with light, music, and the quiet hum of community. People from every corner of the city came to see it, to touch the petals, to breathe in the scent of something pure. For Elena, it was more than a business, it was her dream reborn. For Adrian, it was proof that real things could grow from broken ones. As the guests wandered through the hall, he watched her move among them with her natural grace, thanking volunteers, adjusting bouquets, smiling the way he once thought she never would again. She looked free. When she caught his gaze from across the room, she mouthed a silent thank you, and that simple gesture meant more than any applause. Later that night, after the last guest had gone, the gallery was quiet except for the soft creak of the wooden floor and the faint echo of rain outside. Elena stood by the display window, her reflection blending with the streetlights. Adrian walked up behind her, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You did it," he said. She smiled, taking the cup. "We did it." "No," he said gently. "You did. I just watched you remember who you are." "Maybe," she said softly. "But you reminded me why it mattered." He looked around the room, at the walls lined with photographs of flowers and handwritten notes from visitors. "This place feels alive," he said. "It should," she replied. "It is built on truth." They both laughed quietly at that because they knew how far they had come to understand such a simple thing. A moment later, her phone buzzed. She frowned, reading the screen. "Melissa," she murmured. "She wants to meet." Adrian's expression shifted. "What for?" "I do not know," Elena said. She said it is important. The next day, they met Melissa at a cafe downtown. She looked different, less polished, more human. "I came to apologize," she said, eyes downcast. "What I did to both of you was cruel. I thought ruining you would make me feel powerful, but it just made me feel empty." Adrian listened in silence. There was no satisfaction in her regret, only quiet closure. "You do not owe us anything," he said. "Just learn from it." Melissa nodded, her voice trembling. "I already have." When she left, Elena turned to him. "You forgave her that easily?" "Forgiveness is cheaper than pride," he said. "And I cannot afford pride anymore." She smiled faintly. "You are changing." "No," he said. "You just finally see who I was supposed to be." That evening, they walked through the city together, past the glowing storefronts and the hum of late-night diners. For the first time, their steps matched. Adrian reached for her hand, and she did not pull away. The wind carried the faint scent of jasmine, the kind that always reminded him of her shop. "Do you ever think about the first night we met?" she asked. "Every day," he said, "and every time I thank that version of myself for being foolish enough to walk into your world." She laughed softly. "You think it was fate?" "No," he said, glancing at her. "I think it was the first honest mistake I ever made." She squeezed his hand, her eyes glinting under the streetlights. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the hum of the city and the smell of rain, both of them finally understood that love did not need grand gestures or contracts, it only needed the courage to begin again. By early spring, the world had quietly forgiven Adrian Cole. But what mattered most was that he had forgiven himself. The Honest Bloom Gallery had become more than a place for flowers, it had become a home for second chances. People came to learn, to share, to heal, and in every class, Adrian saw a reflection of the journey he and Elena had taken. Their story had softened into something steady, built on laughter, trust, and shared mornings. Yet that peace was tested one afternoon when Adrian received a call from his company's board. The chairman wanted him to return full-time, to lead an expansion overseas. It was everything he had once wanted, the kind of offer that could have rewritten his name in gold. But when he looked around the gallery, at the colors, the petals, and Elena's laughter drifting from the back room, he realized gold had never made him feel this alive. That evening, he found her in the workshop, arranging a bouquet of white lilies and blue hydrangeas. "You are quiet," she said without looking up. "That usually means trouble." "They offered me London," he said. "CEO position, full control. It would mean leaving for at least a year." She froze for a second, her hands stilling over the flowers. "And?" He hesitated. "I used to think ambition was everything." Now I think ambition without purpose is just noise. She looked at him, her expression soft. So what will you do? I want to stay, he said simply. Not because I am running from success, but because I finally found something worth standing still for. Her eyes glistened, and she set the bouquet aside. You realize how strange that sounds coming from a man like you? I have been called worse, he said with a small smile. Besides, what is the point of conquering the world if you have no one to share it with? She stepped closer, brushing a stray petal from his jacket. Then stay, she whispered. Stay, but not for me, for you. He nodded. For both of us. The next morning, the news broke that Adrian Cole had declined the global expansion role to focus on community-centered initiatives. Reporters speculated about his reasons, but those who had seen him lately walking hand in hand with a florist through the park, helping children carry boxes of donated plants, understood without needing an explanation. A few weeks later, at a charity event hosted at the gallery, Adrian spoke to a small crowd. When I built this space with Elena, he said, I thought it was just about flowers, but it became something much bigger. It became about truth, about growth, and about finding beauty in imperfection. As he spoke, Elena watched from the side, pride and affection glowing in her eyes. When the applause faded, he stepped down from the stage and joined her. You were brilliant, she said. You make me sound wiser than I am, he replied. You are wiser than you think, she said softly. He took her hand, and together they walked outside into the golden light of evening. The city stretched before them, loud, imperfect, and real. Adrian looked at her and said, You know, I once built an empire out of steel and glass, but this, right here, feels like the only thing that will last. She smiled. Then promise me one thing. Anything. Promise me that we never stop building, just differently this time. He squeezed her hand. Deal, he said. But for once, there was no contract, no pen, no paper, just the quiet certainty that this promise, unlike the last one, was already written in both of their hearts. A year later, the Honest Bloom Gallery had grown into something far beyond what either of them had imagined. It was no longer just a business, but a living story of kindness and redemption, where people came not only to buy flowers, but to remember how to begin again. On the anniversary of its opening, the sun poured through the glass roof in soft waves of gold, turning every petal into a shimmer of light. Elena moved through the gallery, greeting guests, her laughter weaving through the gentle hum of music. She looked radiant, her hands dusted with pollen, her eyes bright with purpose. Adrian stood near the back, watching her with quiet admiration. There were no cameras this time, no headlines, just peace. When the crowd thinned, he walked up to her, carrying a small bouquet of white roses tied with a satin ribbon. You know, he said, handing it to her, it still feels like the first day every time I see you here. She smiled. That is because you are still learning to stop planning every detail. Maybe, he said softly, but there is one thing I did plan. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. For a moment, Elena froze. Adrian, no contracts, he said before she could speak. No conditions, just a promise, written in the only way that matters. He opened the box to reveal a simple silver ring, elegant and unpolished, engraved inside with two words, for real. The music in the background faded, as if the world itself had paused. You once told me, he continued, that some things do not need to be fixed. They just need to be felt. So, here I am, feeling everything, and asking you, will you marry me? Elena's eyes filled with tears, not from surprise, but from understanding. You really never stop breaking your own rules, she whispered. Only the wrong ones, he said. She took the ring, her hands trembling slightly, and slipped it on. Yes, she said simply. Yes, because this time, there is nothing fake left between us. The room erupted into gentle applause as their friends and staff, who had been secretly watching from behind the displays, stepped forward. Someone handed them a small cake with the words, New Deal, written in frosting. Adrian laughed, shaking his head. You planned this, did you not? He said. Elena grinned. Maybe a little. I learned from the best. They stood together, surrounded by flowers that filled the air with the scent of lavender and honesty. Outside, the city glowed under the evening sun, alive and forgiving. Adrian looked at her and said, 1 year ago, I signed a contract to fake a feeling. Today, I am signing my life over to the real thing. She leaned in, resting her head against his shoulder. And this time, she whispered, it is not business, it is forever. The camera of life pulled back, leaving them in the warm glow of their own, making a man who once measured love in deals, and a woman who taught him that the only agreement worth keeping is the one written with the heart. And as the lights dimmed and laughter filled the air, the world outside kept spinning, carrying with it the quiet truth that sometimes the best love stories begin with a mistake and end with everything real.